The remnants of the Krathul fleet limped away from Earth, their once proud ships scorched and shattered. Commander Threx, his pride wounded and his mind racing, could not understand it. How had such a primitive species resisted so fiercely? How had they destroyed the fortress that was supposed to end everything? High above the solar system, the aliens held council. Plans for new strikes were discussed, but hesitation spread among the Krathul. Their intelligence systems, hacked and tampered with by humans, reported every loss, every trick, every unpredictable move. The Dominion realized something they had never expected. Humans were not just survivors. They were dangerous, clever, and united. Earth rises on the ground. Earth was scarred, but alive. Cities lay in ruins, yet the people stood. Smoke and dust hung in the air, but sunlight pierced through, revealing streets where children now played amid rubble, where neighbors rebuilt together, and where survivors told stories of heroism. General Elena Ruiz walked through the streets of New York, observing the reconstruction. Soldiers and volunteers worked side by side. Engineers repaired broken power lines. Civilians cleared debris and rebuilt homes. Every corner of Earth reflected a single truth. Humanity would not only survive, it would endure. The Moon and Mars sent ships to aid in rebuilding. Weapons that had saved lives were now used to clear debris and deliver supplies. Every human colony felt the victory. Every human understood that survival had come at a cost, yet it had proven their strength. Remembering the heroes' names of the fallen were recited worldwide. Captain David Reyes, who had sacrificed himself to destroy the fortress, became a symbol of courage. Dr. Amina Patel, engineers, soldiers, and even ordinary civilians were honored for their ingenuity and bravery. In London, survivors gathered around a memorial built in the ruins of the city's university. They hung banners reading, "Courage never dies." In Nairobi, children planted trees in honor of those who had given their lives. On Mars, miners held a silent ceremony before resuming work on the Thunder Lances, now peaceful tools. Though grief remained, there was hope. Humanity had learned that sacrifice was part of survival, and that together nothing was impossible. The Krathul retreat, the alien fleet, broken and humiliated, withdrew toward distant systems. Threx issued a message to all Krathul fleets. Never strike Earth again. The humans are more dangerous than we believed. The message spread through the galaxy like a warning. Other species watched. Observers recorded the resistance, noting how humans had survived attacks far beyond their predicted limits. Humanity was no longer a small, fragile race. They were now a force to be respected, a species that could not be conquered easily. In secret, some Krathul commanders whispered doubts. If humans had destroyed one fortress, what could they do next? What other surprises did Earth's people have? The Dominion would never make the first strike on Earth again. A new era begins. As the Krathul faded into the stars, humanity looked forward. The war had shown them both the fragility and strength of life. Technology had been important, but courage, unity, and imagination had been more powerful than any weapon. Leaders from Earth, Mars, and the Moon gathered in a historic assembly. For the first time, human colonies and nations acted as one. Plans were made to strengthen defenses, improve communication, and explore the stars, not for conquest, but to ensure the safety of every human life. Children listened to stories of the battles, learning not only about war but about resilience. Scientists studied alien technology not to destroy, but to build better tools for life. Engineers designed cities that could survive disasters, both natural and alien. Human creativity and courage, every victory had come from unexpected actions. Pilots had flown through impossible odds. Engineers had created weapons from scraps. Civilians had hacked systems to protect cities. And ordinary people had become heroes in ways no one had imagined. General Ruiz often spoke to young cadets. Remember this: the galaxy may test you, but your courage, your mind, and your unity are what will protect you. Technology alone cannot save you. Humanity must save itself. Even centuries from now, the stories of these battles would teach future generations that human creativity, adaptability, and bravery are unmatched. That a species so small in one galaxy can stand tall against any challenge. A warning to the galaxy humanity did not celebrate recklessly. They knew other species watched. They knew the Krathul would return someday, or other threats might appear. But they had learned a vital lesson. Earth would never be prey. Signals were sent into deep space, messages encoded with both warning and pride. Earth is defended. Humanity is united. Any who strike first will regret it. The galaxy began to whisper about the humans who survived the impossible. Stories spread from one star system to another. Observers from distant worlds recorded everything: the clever traps, the daring pilots, the powerful weapons, and the courage of ordinary civilians. Humanity's reputation had changed forever. Rebuilding and unity on Earth, rebuilding began in earnest. Cities were planned with safety in mind. Old technologies were combined with new discoveries from captured alien equipment. Roads, bridges, and buildings were reconstructed stronger than before. In the countryside, farms produced more food than before the war, using techniques learned from Mars and lunar colonies. Water systems were restored. Education became a priority, as leaders realized that knowledge, courage, and creativity were the most important tools for survival. Communities celebrated each small victory. Children laughed in the streets, playing games that honored the bravery of their parents and grandparents. Artists painted murals of battles won and heroes lost. Musicians composed songs of hope, resilience, and human strength. The legacy of the strike years later, historians would look back at the first alien attack and call it a turning point. Humanity had been tested like never before. They had faced a force far stronger, more advanced and merciless, and yet they had survived. The Krathul never returned. Other civilizations learned quickly that striking Earth first was a mistake. Humanity had made it clear. Any first strike would be their last, but the humans themselves did not grow arrogant. They remembered the cost of the war, the lives lost, and the sacrifices made. Their strength lay not only in power but in humility, intelligence, and the willingness to stand together. A galaxy watching from distant systems, alien civilizations studied humans carefully. Some feared them, some respected them, and some sought friendship. Humans had proven they were more than conquerable. They were clever, adaptable, and united. Explorers and diplomats prepared to reach out, not with weapons, but with knowledge, culture, and courage. Humanity had learned that true power came from imagination, unity, and the strength to protect what you love. A final message, and on Earth generations later, children still whispered the same words their parents and grandparents had repeated during the darkest days. They made the first strike on Earth, but we made sure it was their last. Those words were a reminder, a warning, and a promise. Humanity would face challenges and the galaxy would test them again, but the story of survival, courage, and unity would guide them forever. Humanity had learned the greatest lesson. No matter how dark the skies, no matter how strong the enemy, the human spirit would shine brighter than any weapon, stronger than any fortress, and more enduring than the stars themselves. Epilogue. The skies cleared. Earth, though scarred, thrived. Mars and the moon prospered. Humanity had been tested to the limit and had passed, and the galaxy, once full of doubt and underestimation, now knew the truth. Humans were not merely survivors. Humans were a force of nature. A species that, when threatened, would unite, adapt, and endure. The first strike had been made on Earth, and for the Krathul Dominion, and any other who might have dared, it had indeed been the last. The silence of space was broken only by the faint hum of a damaged engine. Ethan Cole sat in the narrow cockpit of his small exploration ship, trying to hold the controls steady. Warning lights flashed across the panels, each one screaming about another failing system. His hands were steady, though his heart raced faster than the blinking lights. For months, Ethan had been traveling alone, charting unknown regions of the galaxy for the Earth Exploration Corps. He had seen wonders, stars born in glowing clouds, planets wrapped in silver rings, and even the ruins of civilizations long gone. But now his mission had turned into a desperate struggle for survival. A meteor storm had ripped through his vessel, tearing apart shields and cutting into the hull. With only fragments of navigation left, Ethan's ship drifted into a sector he had never seen before. The stars looked different here, brighter, sharper. His damaged ship was like a leaf carried by a current, powerless to choose its direction. Ethan tried to laugh at the absurdity of it. "Well, Cole," he muttered to himself, "you wanted to explore the unknown. Congratulations, you've definitely done it this time." But his humor faded quickly when a shadow fell across his cockpit. Through the cracked viewport, he saw something massive, a ship so enormous it blocked out half the stars. It was not like any vessel he had ever seen. The surface gleamed like polished obsidian, covered with glowing lines that pulsed like veins. The ship moved with purpose as though it were alive. Ethan's system screamed with proximity alerts. Then a bright light engulfed his ship and he felt a sudden pull. His vessel was being drawn toward the alien craft. He fought the controls for a moment but soon realized resistance was useless. His ship was trapped. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was the alien ship's colossal hangar opening, like the jaws of some silent beast. When Ethan woke, the first thing he noticed was silence. His ship was gone. Instead, he lay on a smooth metallic floor that reflected a soft blue glow. The air was breathable, though thicker than Earth's. Strange patterns were carved into the walls, spiraling and branching like living things. Guards surrounded him, tall figures armored in silver plates, their faces hidden behind helmets shaped like sharp angular masks. They stood in disciplined rows, their weapons glowing faintly. Ethan's instincts told him not to move too suddenly. Then the doors at the far end of the chamber opened and all the guards dropped to one knee. Ethan turned his head slowly and his breath caught. The being who entered was unlike anything he had ever imagined. She was tall, easily 3 heads taller than him. Her skin smooth and dark as polished stone, her eyes glowing with a faint golden light. Her movements were graceful but carried weight as if the very air bent to her presence. Upon her brow rested a crown of curved silver, and her robe shimmered like starlight. This was the Queen. Ethan's heart pounded. He had no translator, no way of knowing their language. He expected harsh words, perhaps a trial, maybe even execution for trespassing in their territory. But what happened next left him speechless. The Queen spoke, her voice deep and commanding. The words were alien, yet somehow they carried meaning beyond sound. Perhaps the Scifi, as Ethan would later learn they were called, had technology that bridged language, or perhaps her authority alone made the message clear. 2 guards stepped forward, lifting Ethan gently but firmly to his feet. The Queen studied him with calm intensity, as if searching for something hidden in his eyes. Finally, she turned her gaze toward the side door. From that doorway emerged another figure, slender, armored, and proud. She was clearly younger than the Queen, though she carried herself with equal grace. Her skin gleamed faintly with blue patterns that shifted like rivers of light. Her eyes were sharper, colder, and they locked on Ethan with clear disdain. The Queen extended a hand toward Ethan, then toward the younger figure. Her words rang across the hall. "Daughter, take care of him." The chamber fell silent. The guards looked at each other in disbelief. Even Ethan, who understood little, felt the weight of those words. The princess, Liara, though Ethan did not yet know her name, tensed visibly. Her jaw tightened and her golden eyes flickered with anger. "Mother," she protested in her own tongue, though the tone was clear enough. "Why should I waste my time on a fragile creature? He is nothing." The Queen raised a hand, silencing her. "Strength is not always what it seems. You will learn from him." With that, the Queen turned and left the chamber, her robes trailing behind like flowing light. The guards slowly rose, but their eyes lingered on Ethan with open confusion. Liara stepped closer, her towering form casting a long shadow over him. She looked down, her expression a mix of irritation and curiosity. "So," she said in accented words, rough but understandable, "you are the one my mother trusts? Strange, you look breakable." Ethan swallowed hard. "I get that a lot," he replied carefully, trying not to sound weak. Her lips curved slightly, though not quite into a smile. "If you die too quickly, it will be my disgrace. Do not make me regret this." The guards escorted Ethan and Liara out of the hall. The corridors of the alien ship stretched endlessly, lined with glowing symbols and flowing energy. Ethan's mind raced. He had expected imprisonment, maybe even death. Instead, he had been given, what, a role? A duty? A mystery wrapped in the Queen's strange command. As they walked, Ethan glanced at Liara. She moved like a predator, silent, alert, confident. She seemed annoyed by his presence, yet there was something in her eyes he could not place. Was it doubt? Curiosity? Or perhaps she wondered the same question Ethan now asked himself. Why him? Why would a queen entrust her only daughter to the care of a fragile human explorer? A man who had crashed into their world by accident. The corridors opened into a chamber filled with starlight streaming through transparent walls. Beyond them stretched the endless sea of stars, more brilliant than Ethan had ever seen. Liara stopped, turning to face him fully. "You will stay close to me," she said firmly. "You will follow my words. Disobey and you will not live long." Ethan nodded slowly. "Understood." She studied him for a moment longer, then looked away. For the first time, Ethan saw more than irritation in her expression. There was weight there, responsibility, expectation, perhaps even fear hidden deep inside. As the stars glowed around them, Ethan realized that his journey had only just begun. He was no longer an explorer lost in the unknown. He was part of something greater, an ancient empire, a mysterious queen, and a daughter who had been told to take care of him. And in that moment, Ethan knew one thing for certain. Whatever destiny awaited, it would test him in ways no star chart ever could. Ethan Cole was not sure what troubled him more, the fact that he was trapped inside a gigantic alien ship, or that the alien queen had just handed him over to her daughter as if he were some strange gift. The words still echoed in his mind. Take care of him. Princess Liara walked ahead of him through the glowing corridors, her long strides forcing Ethan to hurry to keep up. She moved with purpose, every step balanced and powerful, while he tried not to trip over his own boots. The guards who had escorted them earlier had disappeared, leaving the two of them alone. Liara finally stopped before a wide chamber that looked like a training hall. The walls stretched high into the air, glowing lines running along their edges. The floor was marked with circles and symbols, perhaps for combat drills. Weapons rested in racks against the walls, most of them glowing faintly, made of materials Ethan had never seen. She turned to him, arms folded. This will be your place while you remain with me. You will observe, you will learn, and you will not interfere. Ethan raised an eyebrow. So I'm a student? Liara's sharp eyes narrowed. No, you are a test, Ethan blinked. A test? Yes, she said coldly. My mother believes there is something in you. Something useful. I do not see it. But I will find out what it is or prove her wrong. Ethan sighed quietly. Great, he thought. I've gone from explorer to lab rat. The first days were strange. Liara treated him like a fragile object, giving him small tasks. Carry this, move that, watch this training. Ethan quickly grew tired of being treated as though he might shatter if touched. One morning, while Liara practiced with a long spear that glowed like fire, Ethan sat on a bench, arms crossed. She moved like lightning, her strikes cutting the air with precision. The floor shook as her weapon slammed down, leaving a faint scorch mark. You humans rely on tools, she said without looking at him. We Sarathi rely on strength. Our power is our proof of worth. Ethan stood, stepping closer. Strength is good. But what if your strength isn't enough? Liara stopped, lowering the spear. Her golden eyes locked on him. If strength is not enough, then you were never meant to win. Ethan shook his head. No, that's where humans are different. We don't always have strength. We survive because we think, because we adapt. We find another way when one path is closed. Liara tilted her head slightly, studying him. Then, without warning, she thrust the spear into his hands. Show me, Ethan froze. The weapon was heavy, humming with energy, and far too long for him to control. He held it awkwardly, the weight dragging his arms down. Liara stepped back. Defend yourself. What? Against you? Ethan asked, horrified. Yes, she said calmly, drawing another weapon from the rack, a curved blade that glowed faintly blue. Do not worry. I will not kill you, but you will learn what weakness feels like. Before Ethan could protest, she struck. He barely raised the spear in time to block, the force nearly knocking him off his feet. He stumbled backward, the weapon vibrating in his hands. Too slow, Liara said, pressing forward. Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't match her strength or speed. But he remembered her words. Strength is proof of worth. If he tried to play her game, he would lose. Instead of holding the spear tightly, he let it fall into her strike, twisting his body aside. Her blade met empty air as the spear slipped from his hands and clattered to the ground. Liara spun, surprised, and Ethan darted to the side, grabbing a small metal rod from the weapon rack. This is more my style, he said, gripping the rod like a tool. Liara attacked again, but this time Ethan didn't block. He ducked, rolled, and struck the floor near her feet with the rod. The sound echoed sharply, distracting her for a split second. It wasn't strength, it was timing, noise, and distraction. Liara stopped, lowering her blade. For a moment, her expression softened into something like surprise. Then she laughed, not mockingly, but with genuine amusement. "Clever," she said. "Not strong, but clever. That is what you mean by adapting." Ethan straightened, panting. "Exactly. Humans don't need to be the strongest. We just need to think differently." From that day forward, their relationship shifted. Liara still trained with her weapons, but she also began asking Ethan questions. How did humans survive on a small, fragile world? How did they build ships that crossed the stars without being the most powerful species? Ethan explained in simple words. He spoke of cooperation, of tools, of stories and imagination. He showed her how humans could make fire with sparks, or how to fix a broken panel using scraps. Liara listened, sometimes skeptical, sometimes curious. One evening, while they sat in the chamber beneath the glowing walls, Liara asked quietly, "Do you ever fear? Knowing you are weaker than so many others in the galaxy?" Ethan looked at the stars through the high window. "Of course I fear. But fear doesn't stop us. It teaches us. It reminds us to prepare, to keep moving forward. Fear is not shame. It's a guide." Liara was silent for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. "Perhaps there is strength in that." But not everyone agreed. As days passed, Ethan noticed the stares of Sarathi nobles who passed through the halls. Their eyes were sharp, cold, disapproving. Whispers followed him. Though he could not understand their language fully, he knew what whispers meant anywhere in the galaxy. To them, he was not a teacher or a companion. He was a weakness. Liara, too, felt the weight of their judgment. One night, after a long training session, she stood at the edge of the chamber, fists clenched. "They think I am less because I listen to you," she admitted bitterly. Ethan hesitated, then stepped closer. "And what do you think?" She looked at him, her golden eyes steady. "I think my mother saw something in you I did not. Something I am only beginning to understand." The next day, their fragile bond was tested. As they walked through the gardens of the ship, a vast space filled with glowing plants and streams of silver water, strange beasts leapt from the shadows. The creatures were large, with 4 legs and sharp teeth that glimmered in the light. The guards were far behind. It was only Ethan and Liara. Liara moved instantly, drawing her blade and striking one beast down. Another lunged and she spun, cutting through its thick hide. But a third beast slipped past her defense, racing straight toward Ethan. Ethan had no weapon, only a small scanner clipped to his belt. He yanked it free and pointed it at the beast's eyes. The scanner emitted a sudden bright flash, startling the creature. It stumbled, blinded for a moment, giving Liara the chance to finish it with a swift strike. When the beasts lay still, Liara turned to Ethan. Her chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. She studied the small device in his hand, then looked at him. "You are not strong," she said. "But you saved me." Ethan managed a weak smile. "Like I said, we adapt." Liara's gaze softened. For the first time, she bowed her head slightly. "Perhaps you are more than a test." That night, Ethan lay awake in the small chamber given to him. He thought about everything. The Queen's strange command, Liara's growing respect, and the whispers of disapproval from the nobles. He didn't know what fate had in store, but he sensed one truth. He was no longer just a lost explorer. He was part of something larger. A story that could change not only his life, but perhaps the future of 2 very different peoples. And though he did not know it yet, danger was already moving in the shadows. The days passed, and Ethan's strange role in the Sarathi Empire became clearer. He was not a prisoner anymore, but he was not free either. The Queen had placed him under Princess Liara's care, and the princess had begun to see him less as a burden and more as something else. Still, he felt eyes on him wherever he went. In the halls of the great ship, Sarathi nobles watched him with silent disapproval. To them, he was small, weak, and unworthy of standing beside their princess. But Ethan had learned to ignore stares long ago. What worried him more was the way those whispers had grown louder, as if the walls themselves carried rumors. Liara, too, had noticed the change. One evening, after hours of training, she stood at the edge of the starlit chamber, her golden eyes troubled. "They are speaking against us," she said quietly. Ethan looked up from the panel he was repairing. "Because of me?" Her jaw tightened. "Yes, they say I waste time with a fragile outsider. They say my mother's judgment is clouded. Some even say she has weakened the Empire by trusting you." Ethan put down his tools, wiping his hands on his suit. "And what do you think?" Liara turned to him, her gaze steady. "I think they are afraid. They fear change. They fear what they do not understand." Ethan gave a small smile. "Sounds familiar. Humans are the same. We fear the unknown until we learn from it." But neither of them realized how deep the fear ran, or how dangerous it had become. The first sign came during a walk through the gardens. The glowing plants swayed gently as silver streams trickled over stone. Ethan was enjoying the rare peace when he heard a faint sound, a whisper of movement too quick to be natural. "Liara," he said softly, "we're not alone." The princess stiffened, her hand going to the blade at her side. From the shadows stepped 3 Sarathi warriors, their armor dark and their eyes cold. They did not bow. They did not greet. Instead, one of them pointed a weapon straight at Ethan. "Step aside, princess," the warrior said. His voice was sharp and filled with disdain. "This creature does not belong here." Liara's blade gleamed as she drew it. "He is under my protection," the warrior sneered. "Your protection shames you." The court whispers. The nobles grow restless. "This is your last warning. Cast him aside or suffer his fate with him." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had no weapon, no armor. But before he could speak, Liara moved like lightning. Her blade clashed against the warriors, sparks lighting the garden. The other 2 rushed forward and chaos broke loose. Ethan dove to the side, rolling behind a stone pillar. He grabbed a loose piece of glowing vine and yanked it free, the bioluminescent tendril still pulsing with energy. He didn't know if it could help, but he had learned to use whatever was at hand. Liara fought fiercely, her strikes precise and powerful, but 3 against 1 was not a fair fight. One warrior slipped past her defense, lunging toward Ethan. Acting on instinct, Ethan snapped the glowing vine across the warrior's face. The sudden burst of light blinded him, and Ethan shoved the warrior into the stream, where his armor sparked against the water. Liara finished the fight with swift strikes, her blade forcing the last 2 warriors to retreat. They melted into the shadows, but their words lingered like poison. "You will fall with him." Breathing hard, Liara turned to Ethan. Her face was pale with anger. "This is worse than I thought." They no longer whisper. They act. That night, Ethan lay awake in his chamber, thinking about the attack. It had not been random. It had been planned, deliberate, and bold. Whoever was behind it had influence and confidence. The next morning, he followed Liara to the council hall. The vast chamber was filled with nobles in gleaming robes, their eyes glowing faintly as they argued in low tones. At the far end sat the queen, calm and regal, her presence silencing the hall. Liara stepped forward. "Mother, there has been an attack. 3 warriors sought to harm him." She gestured toward Ethan. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Some eyes narrowed. Others smirked with satisfaction. The queen's gaze sharpened, but her voice remained steady. "So the shadows have grown bold." One noble stepped forward, his robes dark and lined with crimson. "With respect, my queen, this was inevitable. You have brought weakness into our court. You honor a fragile creature who cannot defend himself. This human does not belong among us." Ethan felt the heat of dozens of stares on him, but before he could speak, Liara did. Her voice rang clear. "He is not weak. He saved me in the gardens. He adapts where others would fall. If you cannot see his value, then you are blind." The noble's eyes narrowed. "You defend him as if he were your equal. But what will you do when your enemies strike harder?" The queen raised her hand, silencing the hall. "Enough! The court will not decide this. The shadows will reveal themselves soon, and when they do, we will act." But Ethan knew the truth. The rebellion had already begun. Days later, Ethan walked the corridors alone, studying the strange patterns along the walls. They pulsed like living veins, carrying energy through the ship. He bent down to examine a faint crack in one of the panels. As he did, he heard voices nearby. "The queen is blind. She trusts her daughter too much. We will strike during the ceremony. End them both, and the Empire will return to strength." Ethan froze, his heart pounding. Carefully, he leaned closer. The voices belonged to 2 nobles, their cloaks brushing the floor as they passed. He could not see their faces clearly, but their words were clear enough. A ceremony, an attack, assassination. He waited until their footsteps faded before slipping away. He needed to tell Liara. When Ethan shared what he had heard, Liara's expression darkened. So it is true. They plan to strike at the heart of the Empire. We need to warn your mother, Ethan urged. Liara shook her head. No. If we go to her without proof, the nobles will say we spread lies. We must find evidence, and so, the two of them worked together in secret. Ethan used his human skills, observing, listening, noticing small details others ignored. Liara used her authority to move through the halls without question. One night, in a chamber filled with glowing crystals, they found what they were looking for, an encoded message hidden within the energy patterns. It was a call to arms, a promise to overthrow the queen during the coming ceremony. Liara stared at the glowing words, her fists clenched. This is treason, Ethan nodded. And it's coming fast. The day of the ceremony arrived. The great hall was filled with Sarathi nobles, their robes shining like starlight. The queen sat upon her throne, calm and unshaken, though her eyes carried the weight of knowledge. Liara stood at her side, blade at her hip. Ethan stood close behind, trying to appear smaller than he felt. As the hall filled with chants and the glowing banners of the Empire, Ethan's eyes darted across the crowd. He remembered the voices in the corridor, the promise of an attack. His stomach tightened with dread. Then he saw it. Movement among the nobles. A hand reaching beneath a robe. A weapon glinting faintly in the light. Liara! Ethan shouted. The hall erupted in chaos. The grand hall was a storm of motion and light. Sarathi nobles who had once stood in silence now moved like predators, their weapons drawn, energy crackling along their armor. Chaos had erupted as planned, an ambush meant to strike at the queen and her daughter. Ethan ducked behind a glowing pillar, his heart pounding. He had never been in a fight like this, never even imagined what it would be like to face enemies so fast, so skilled, so relentless. Yet he could not run. Liara's presence beside him reminded him that there was no safety without action. Stay close, she hissed, spinning her blade in a deadly arc. A weapon cut through the air inches from his head, the hum of energy making his ears ring. Ethan grabbed a loose metal panel from the floor and raised it like a shield. The noble behind it stumbled slightly, giving Liara a chance to strike. She moved with grace and precision, her blade slicing through the air, each strike calculated to disable rather than kill. Though the force of her hits sent opponents sprawling, still there were too many of them. One warrior, taller and stronger than the rest, advanced toward Ethan, his armor glowing red in warning. Ethan's mind raced. There was no strength he could match against this creature. Only wit, only speed, only quick thinking. He darted to the side, tripping over a piece of debris, and caught a small rod lying on the floor. It was part of the hall's energy system, not a weapon, but it hummed faintly with electricity. He swung it at the enemy's leg, and the sudden discharge startled him just long enough for Liara to attack, forcing the taller warrior to stumble backward. Good thinking, Liara shouted, her golden eyes glinting. But we can't keep doing this forever. Ethan nodded. Then we end it. Meanwhile, the queen remained calm atop her throne, her hands raised slightly as if controlling the storm around her. She had faced rebellion before, but never so openly, never so close to betrayal within her own court. Her gaze found Ethan in the chaos. Even now, small though he was, he had proven himself indispensable. The taller warrior roared and charged again. Ethan ducked beneath a swing, grabbed another energy rod and jammed it into a control panel on the floor. Sparks leapt and the lights flickered, sending the hall into momentary confusion. Liara seized the opportunity, leaping forward with unmatched speed. She struck the warrior's weapon from his grasp, forcing him to fall to his knees. Then, without hesitation, she held her blade at his throat, breathing hard but steady. "Yield," she commanded. The warrior froze, then slowly lowered his hands. Liara did not relax her stance, her eyes sharp and unwavering. Ethan wiped sweat from his brow. He could not believe they had managed this far. "That actually worked," he muttered. Liara glanced at him, a faint smile breaking through the tension. "It was your idea," she said. "Do not underestimate what you can do." The hall's remaining attackers were disoriented now, their strategy broken. The rebellion had counted on overwhelming numbers and precise timing, but Ethan's quick thinking combined with Liara's skill had turned the tide. But their biggest challenge was yet to come. From the far end of the hall, a shadow moved, a figure taller than all the others, radiating authority and menace. This was the leader of the rebellion, a warlord whose power alone could crush ordinary Sarathi. His eyes glowed crimson as he surveyed the hall, then rested on Ethan and Liara. "You should not be here," he said, his voice like steel. "This human is no friend, and you, princess, have dishonored your people by siding with him." Liara stepped forward, her blade still humming with energy. "We fight together or not at all. You will not harm the queen or me." The warlord laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the hall. He raised his arms, summoning a wave of energy that rippled outward. Guards and nobles alike were forced back, shields flaring in response. Ethan felt a pressure against him, the air thick with the sheer force of the warlord's power. "Stay behind me," Liara ordered. "I will handle him." Ethan hesitated. He was no warrior, yet he could not stand idle. He noticed the glowing control panels along the walls, and an idea sparked. Using tools, energy, and quick thinking, he could create a distraction, something that could level the battlefield enough for Liara to strike. He moved swiftly, dodging blasts and rolling across the hall. His hands touched a panel and he rerouted the energy, sending a surge of light across the floor. The warlord's attention was drawn to it, and for a brief moment his focus wavered. Liara lunged, her blade striking with precision and force. Sparks flew as her weapon met his, the air around them shimmering with power. They clashed repeatedly, Liara moving like a storm, Ethan providing small but crucial diversions that disrupted the warlord's rhythm. Time stretched, each second a test of endurance and strategy. Ethan realized something. Strength alone would not win this battle. Cleverness, timing, and courage were equally important. Humans had survived countless dangers with far less strength than their enemies, and now he understood that lesson in full. Liara began to see it too. His movements, his distractions, his willingness to act under pressure, these were qualities her people often ignored. Strength was admirable, but adaptability was power of another kind. Finally, after what felt like hours, Liara struck with a decisive blow. The warlord staggered, caught off guard by the combination of human ingenuity and Sarathi skill. He fell to one knee, gasping, and slowly sank to the ground, defeated but alive. The hall went silent. Nobles and guards alike stared, their eyes wide with shock. Ethan stood beside Liara, panting and exhilarated, knowing they had survived a trial that could have ended in disaster. Later, in the quiet of the chamber away from the battle, Liara looked at Ethan, her golden eyes glowing softly. "You saved me again," she said. Ethan shook his head. "We saved each other." Liara's expression softened further. "Your mother was right. There is something in you, something my people do not see. Humans have a strength that is not measured by muscles or weapons. They survive because they adapt, because they think, because they care." Ethan smiled faintly. "And some Sarathi have more strength than they realize, especially when they fight for something they believe in." The queen arrived shortly after, her presence filling the chamber. She studied both of them carefully, then nodded. "You have passed the first test, not because of brute force, but because of trust, courage, and wisdom. Ethan Cole, you have proven the value of your people. Liara, you have proven the value of your judgment." Liara bowed slightly, her respect for Ethan clear. Ethan bowed back, feeling a strange pride. The rebellion had been defeated for now. But the queen's words reminded them that peace was only temporary, and that strength came in many forms, not just power. As they looked out over the galaxy through the high windows of the ship, Ethan realized something profound. He had begun as a stranger, a fragile human in a world of giants. Now he had become an ally, a teacher, and perhaps even a friend. His journey was far from over, but for the first time, he understood that he could face the unknown, not alone, but with trust, courage, and intelligence. And Liara, the princess of the Sarathi, had begun to see humans as something more than weak outsiders. Together, they had faced fire, chaos, and betrayal, and had survived.